Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron. Just thought we'd do a quick little live stream to discuss the news that Dele has completed his loan move to Turkish club Beşiktaş. Everton confirmed earlier on today that Dele has completed his loan move to Turkish side Beşiktaş for the remainder of the 2022-2023 season. The 26-year-old midfielder moves to Istanbul after joining the Blues from Tottenham on the final day of the 2022 January transfer window. Dele, who has 37 England caps, made 13 appearances for Everton, including 2 substitute appearances in the Premier League this season. I do believe it is a loan move with an option to buy as opposed to an obligation to buy, so it's not an obligation, it's actually an option. Fabrizio Romano actually confirmed, just as the transfer was confirmed, that Everton could receive the following fees for Dele Alli: £6 million if the buy option clause will be triggered before the 1st of January 2023, £8 million if the buy option clause will be triggered from January 1st to June, and then Fabrizio Romano confirms that it is up to Beşiktaş as it is not a mandatory clause. So at this moment, Dele Alli is scheduled to return to Everton, obviously at the end of this season in July, next July. However, my gut feeling at this very current moment is that we will not see Dele Alli in an Everton shirt ever again. And that doesn't necessarily mean my gut feeling is that he will sign for Beşiktaş on a permanent deal. I just think this move very clearly says that it didn't work out for Dele, and that, ultimately it was time for himself and the football club to part ways. Obviously, only signed 6 months ago on deadline day, January, and I think it's fair to say his time at Everton hasn't been a success. Now, don't get me wrong, there has been moments where he has shown quality, and there have certainly been moments in which his quality has helped Everton significantly. You think back to that game against Crystal Palace, obviously the game that we all remember. Dele had a massive role to play in that game, coming off the substitute bench and effectively changing the game for Everton. Everton went from being behind in the game and not particularly looking confident and not really looking like we had much chance of not only getting back into the game, but also, staying in the Premier League. And then Dele come onto the pitch and showed his quality, showed his ability, and ultimately, as I said, had a big part to play in that comeback that obviously solidified our Premier League status. He's had a couple of other games where he's come on and he's showed quality and he's changed the game a little bit, but for the most part, considering the hype around this transfer and considering the sort of the hope that Dele would be able to revitalise his career under Frank Lampard at Everton, that hasn't worked, and for me that means that this goes down as a failure. And to say that Dele is leaving the football club only 6 months after joining, when we're at a point where we are significantly lacking in any real depth to the squad, especially in forward players. Now, I know you could say Dele's a midfielder, but let's be honest, Dele was a player that could have played in a false nine, could have played as a forward, could have played on the wing. He was a forward player. So to say that we've lost him, only a couple of games into the season, and the fact that the manager hasn't particularly seemed that bothered about losing him, just shows how that this move wasn't a successful one, and that is disappointing. Because at the end of the day, there is a player there. You don't go from being one of the hottest young prospects on the planet in football, to being a player who a club who have only just survived relegation don't even want in their squad within 5 years. Without some big questions being asked, and I don't think it's a quality thing, because Dele very clearly still has that quality, because you don't lose it. You don't just wake up all of a sudden as a footballer and think, I can't play football now. I was boss yesterday and now I'm not very good. I don't necessarily think it's an injury thing, because he hasn't really had any significant injuries throughout his career, which would sort of play a part in his decline, shall we say, to be nice. So I don't really know what it is. I don't want to sit here and have a go at Dele's attitude or have a go at ultimately his application, because I think that would be unfair. I don't know Dele. I don't know how hard he trains. I don't know how much he applies himself as a professional, as a footballer. I don't know any of that. So it'd be I think a little bit ill-mannered of me to sit here and say he's got an attitude issue, but it's very clearly, his attitude that is the issue. But the problem is there's a problem. Because as I said, you don't go from being one of the sort of most sought after young players on the planet, and certainly one of the most sought after young players on the planet, a lad who won, I think, Young Player of the Season 2 seasons on the bounce, a lad who won the Premier League Goal of the Season at Tottenham as well. You don't go from that to as I said, a player that, a side that have only just survived relegation, who have got significant issues with their depth in forward players, not even wanting to keep you at the football club, for nothing. So there's very clearly an issue there. As I said, I think it's a bigger disappointment for me because of the fact that quality is very clearly there from Dele. We didn't see an awful lot of him towards the back end of last season. As I said, we only really seen him in substitute appearances, and don't get me wrong, as I said, he done really, really well against Crystal Palace, and there was a couple of other substitute appearances where he looked okay as well. But for the most part, he wasn't effective whatsoever coming off the bench. He hasn't really been effective when he started games of football for Everton. As I said, barring that game against Crystal Palace and maybe one or two others, he's looked poor when he's come on. He's not had an impact. He's not looked quick enough to keep up with the pace of the game. He's not seemed like he was interested. I'm not saying he wasn't, but he's not seemed like he was interested in keeping up with the game or getting involved or having an impact on it. And I think this transfer absolutely screams of Frank Lampard looking at Tottenham in January and looking at the Dele Alli situation and thinking, okay, that is worth the risk of him, being able to find his feet again and being able to ultimately, I suppose, get back to where he was 5 or 6 years ago when he was, as I said, one of the best young players on the planet. But I think it quickly became apparent to Frank Lampard that wasn't going to be the case. And I think Dele fell under the same sort of category as a couple of other players at the football club, of players that Frank Lampard just simply couldn't trust for the position and the situation that we're in. And that was why you didn't see him starting games towards the end of last season. That was why you only really seen him coming off the bench with 10, 15 minutes to go. And I think that was because Frank Lampard, A, couldn't fit him into the team, in the fact that the way Everton were playing at that moment just didn't suit Dele, but also B, I don't think he was seeing enough from him in training. He very clearly wasn't seeing enough from him because he wasn't getting those opportunities to start. He wasn't getting those opportunities to perform from the first minute. And at the time I remember us all sitting here saying, why don't you give Dele a start, try something different with Dele? But it was clear that Frank couldn't put that trust and faith in Dele and the performance that Dele would bring when we were in such a position. And that was why going into this season in the summer I was sort of thinking, well, okay, that's understandable. Maybe the type of player Dele is, maybe the type of way, the way Dele performs, maybe that wasn't suited to a relegation battle. He's never been in a relegation battle before. He was never anywhere near a relegation battle with Tottenham, so maybe that didn't suit his style and his system. Maybe this season, now we've got a fresh start, it's a new season, etc., etc., maybe we'll see him a little bit more. Maybe we'll see more of Dele. Maybe we'll see, him in different positions or him getting a chance. And then Chelsea come along a couple of weeks ago, and a game where I think we all were adamant Dele would start as a false nine, as a striker, because Rondon was suspended, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's injured, and he didn't start that game. And I think from that point, I looked at it anyway and just thought, yeah, this lad's got no future at Everton. If he stays, it'll be very much of the same as last season, in the sense that some weeks he won't come on at all, some weeks he'll come off the bench. But don't be surprised if he ends up leaving the football club. I think I actually said in the summer, don't be surprised if Dele isn't an Everton player come the end of the summer transfer window, and here we are. He's confirmed his move to Beşiktaş today. As I said, it is only a loan deal until the end of the season. There is an option to buy for Beşiktaş, however, no obligation to buy, so they don't have to buy him at the end of the loan spell. But listen, whether it's Beşiktaş he goes to or whether it's somewhere else, I don't think we'll ever see Dele in an Everton shirt ever again, if I'm being honest with you. I just don't think we'll see it. And it ultimately puts an end to what has been a bad transfer. a bad move. And I say a bad move because some people are looking at it and go, well, Cam, we've not really spent any money on him. We don't owe Tottenham any money until he hits a certain amount of appearances. And I don't really know how that will work because there's absolutely no chance Daniel Levy will settle for not getting anything for Dele Alli, because obviously the deal was structured in the sense that Everton don't pay anything until he makes 20 appearances, and then we pay a bit more after 30 appearances. He hasn't made 20 appearances for Everton. So in the very broad sense, looking at it from the facts we know, that would suggest that Everton don't owe Tottenham anything for him, but there's not a chance that that deal will be structured in the sense that Everton don't pay anything for him. So I'm sure we'll owe Tottenham some money, but also we'll have been being paid a very lucrative amount of money. I don't know how much it was, his weekly wage, but it will have been a nice amount of money. You know, he won't have been there for 15 quid a week. Will he have been there for, you know, maybe even upwards of £100,000 a week, something like that? So it's been a financial failure in that sense, that we've paid a lad that much money for very little output. Now, okay, as I said, we had that Crystal Palace game where he done well, and I think he, you know, some people would say, well, he's earned his money in that sense because he come on and he changed what was a really important game for us. But the reality is we all expected more from him. We all expected to see a different player. I think he'll suit Turkey, to be fair, because it's a much slower league. It's much more focused on the technical ability of a player rather than the pace and the power and the stamina and this, that and the other that the Premier League is. So I actually think he'll suit Turkey, and I actually think he'll do really, really well there. But the reality is he hasn't done really, really well at Everton, and it's been a failure, whether we like it or not. I'm not willing to sit here and say a lad getting paid, you know, that much money per week for the last 6 months, one substitute appearance, although it was an important game, is enough to warrant that. It's not. You know, it hasn't worked, and I think Frank realised very, very quickly that it wasn't going to work, and that's why Dele has left the football club. I wish him the best of luck. I do, and I hope he goes and does a brilliant job over in Turkey, because then they'll buy him and we'll get a little fee for him. But the reality is yeah, it hasn't worked for Dele. For one reason or another, he's not an Everton player now, so whatever the reason is that his career has declined so much and he hasn't been able to get up to them heights, I don't know, because it's not injuries, because he's not had a big injury. You know, it's not just that he's woke up one day and not being able to play footy, because that doesn't happen. Is it attitude? Is it application? Is he that arsed about being a footballer? I think one thing we're seeing more and more, and I'm not accusing Dele of this, I'm just saying, one thing we're seeing more and more of in this day and age with modern day footballers is because there's so many other avenues of revenue, because there's so many other opportunities to be noticed, to be famous, to be popular, to make money, i.e. social media, TikTok, YouTube. We've seen with the likes of Ben Foster, clothing brand deals, front covers of magazines, you know, award shows, appearances, music, this, that and the other. I think there's so many avenues now for footballers to put their energy in and clothing and make money elsewhere, that I think some of them, and again, I'm not accusing Dele of this, but maybe this is the case, some of them just lose that passion for football and think, well, why will I go and put my body at this amount of risk when I'm still making that money anyway, and even if I retire from football, I'm going to be able to go and do this clothing brand or this movie or this music or whatever, and I'll still make money. I don't know whether that's the case with Dele. I don't know. The only person that knows the answer to that is Dele. But the reality is he's left Everton, he's joined Beşiktaş, and I wish him the best of luck. But I'm not surprised by this. It hasn't worked, and that's the way it is. One thing I am worried about is Everton have now lost another player that will have featured this season had he have stayed. Even if it was just coming off the bench with 10-15 minutes to go, he will have featured. And the reality is we've lost him now. So we already needed... we needed two strikers before Dele's departure. You know, we needed a forward to come in and replace Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's out injured, and we needed, for me, somebody who can play as a forward but also as a winger across the front three to replace Richarlison. We've now lost Dele, and we could potentially over the next couple of days lose Anthony Gordon. So that leaves us with Damari Gray, Solomon Rondon, and Dwight McNeil. Nobody else, because the assumption that Alex Iwobi is going to continue as a centre midfielder, we haven't got any other forward options until Dominic Calvert-Lewin returns from injury, and that is terrifying, because we will not win Premier League games with them three, and we will be in the bottom three by the time Dominic Calvert-Lewin returns from injury if we don't bring in a couple of forward players and probably another winger now if we're going to lose Dele and Anthony Gordon. But Everton have done what Everton do and allowed a player to leave the football club, even though we're not really in a position for that to be the case, and maybe allowing another player to leave the football club with 7 days to go of the window when we are criminally lacking creativity and quality going forward. But some people would say, well, Dele didn't really bring any of that anyway, but what Dele was a player that was in there that could have brought that, or was at least somebody that was an option that we now haven't got. But there you go. Anyway, thought I'd do a little video for it. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Once again, big thanks to everybody for joining us live. Inanda says, just worried that we aren't bringing in players to fill the gaps in the squad. Me too. Greetings from Germany says, Shane, what's happening? We need 2 forwards, says Mark. If Frank's letting him go, there must be a reason. Because he's not. It didn't work, I think. Steven says, it wasn't working, so glad he's gone. We need to get a striker and move on. Yeah. What are you having for your tea? Says Glenn, I'm having salmon. Mr. Howell says, I think we paid Tottenham 20% of the transfer fee if we sell him. There you go. There you go. Maybe that is the case. Anyway, big thank you to everybody in the live comments. Really, really do appreciate it. If you want to see a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below and we'll get involved with as many of them as we can. We're either going to do another live stream later or tomorrow. The preview to the Brentford game, of course, will be tomorrow. But I want to do another live stream talking about the latest transfer news and rumours and stuff. So that'll be coming within the next 24 hours. So look out for that one. I might even do it late tonight because I like doing them late. But anyway, big thank you all for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments on the Dele move if you're watching as a YouTube video. If you have enjoyed it, leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. And we'll see you later.